Raphael's life had always been defined by hard work and dedication. As a young man, he was known for his relentless drive and unwavering sense of responsibility. These traits only strengthened after he became a father. When his wife passed away unexpectedly, Raphael's world crumbled, leaving him to pick up the pieces and raise their son, Rocky, on his own. Rocky was 18 when his mother passed. At the cusp of adulthood, he was old enough to understand the weight of their loss, but young enough to still rely on his father for guidance and support. Raphael threw himself into being both a parent and a provider, working long hours to ensure Rocky could continue his education and have a stable future. In those 2 years following his wife's death, Raphael rarely thought about his own needs. His focus was solely on Rocky. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt cold and empty. Mealtimes were quiet, with both father and son lost in their thoughts. Nights were lonelier, and the weekends dragged on without the family outings they once enjoyed. But life has a way of moving forward, even when the heart resists. At 44, Raphael began to entertain the idea of companionship again. He wasn't looking for love, not exactly. He wanted someone to share his days with. Someone to talk to when the silence in the house became unbearable. That's when he met Julie. Julie was everything Raphael hadn't realized he needed. She was vibrant, full of energy, and had a way of making even mundane conversations feel exciting. At 32, she was younger than Raphael, but her maturity and warmth made the age gap feel irrelevant. They met at a friend's dinner party, where Julie's laughter filled the room. Raphael, initially hesitant, found himself drawn to her. By the end of the evening, they were deep in conversation, and Raphael couldn't remember the last time he had smiled so much. Their courtship was slow and cautious. Raphael was mindful of Rocky's feelings, knowing that introducing someone new into their lives could be complicated. But Julie made an effort to bridge the gap. When she first met Rocky, she approached him with kindness and patience, sensing his hesitation. Rocky, at 20, was protective of his father. He had witnessed Raphael's grief and admired his strength. The idea of someone else stepping into their lives felt foreign, almost intrusive. But Julie's genuine interest in getting to know him slowly broke down his walls. She encouraged him to focus on his studies, often asking about his college projects and goals. She even attended one of his basketball games, cheering louder than anyone else in the stands. Within a few months, Julie became a fixture in their home. Raphael proposed to her during a quiet dinner, and she said yes with tears in her eyes. The wedding was small and intimate, attended only by close friends and family. Raphael felt a renewed sense of hope, believing he had finally found a way to rebuild his life. But beneath the surface of this newfound happiness, something darker was brewing. Rocky's feelings toward Julie began to shift in ways he couldn't fully understand or control. At first, he admired her beauty and charisma. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Confident, kind, and effortlessly captivating. He found himself watching her more closely, noticing the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, or the way her laugh lit up a room. What started as innocent admiration quickly turned into something more. Rocky began to seek out moments alone with Julie. Under the guise of casual conversation, he would linger in the kitchen while she cooked, offering to help even when it wasn't needed. He made excuses to sit next to her during movie nights, his arm brushing against hers accidentally. Julie noticed his attention, but initially dismissed it. She assumed it was a phase, a young man's admiration for his stepmother. But as the weeks passed, the energy between them grew charged. Rocky's compliments became bolder. His gaze lingering a little too long, he would say things like "You look stunning today," or "I can see why Dad fell for you." Julie began to feel uneasy, but didn't know how to address it. She didn't want to cause tension in the family, especially not after Raphael had worked so hard to bring them together, so she ignored it, hoping it would pass. But Rocky's feelings didn't fade. They intensified one evening while Raphael was working late. Julie and Rocky found themselves alone in the living room. They were watching a movie, the room dimly lit. Rocky turned to her during a quiet moment and said, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." Julie froze, unsure of how to respond. "Rocky, that's sweet, but I mean it," he interrupted. "You're incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." Julie's heart raced. She knew this was crossing a line, but a small part of her was flattered. It had been a long time since someone looked at her the way Rocky did, with pure, unfiltered admiration. Against her better judgment, she didn't shut him down as firmly as she should have. That moment marked the beginning of their forbidden bond. What followed was a series of escalating encounters. At first it was subtle, a lingering touch, a shared look that lasted too long. Then it became more overt. Rocky found excuses to be alone with Julie whenever Raphael wasn't home. He would brush against her as he passed by, his hand lingering on her waist. Julie, caught in a whirlwind of guilt and desire, struggled to resist. She told herself it was wrong, that it had to stop, but she couldn't deny the thrill she felt in those stolen moments. Raphael, busy with work, remained oblivious, trusting both his wife and his son completely. The affair escalated one evening when Julie and Rocky shared a bottle of wine while Raphael was working late. The alcohol lowered their inhibitions, and before they knew it, their connection crossed a point of no return. From that night on, their relationship became physical, an illicit secret they both knew could destroy their family. They justified their actions in their own twisted ways. Julie told herself that Raphael had been distant, that she deserved to feel desired. Rocky convinced himself that his feelings for Julie were genuine, that their connection was meant to be. But secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully they are guarded. The bond that Julie and Rocky had built was not only forbidden, it was a ticking time bomb, one that would soon explode with devastating consequences. Raphael's routine rarely changed. He was a man of habit, leaving the house early every morning and returning late in the evening, his days consumed by long hours at work. As a construction site manager, his job was demanding and physically exhausting, but he took pride in providing for his family. He had no reason to doubt the peace and harmony he believed existed within the walls of his home, but Raphael wasn't completely oblivious. Over time, he began to notice subtle changes in the dynamic between Julie and Rocky. At first, it was the small things, glances exchanged during dinner that lingered a moment too long, or the way Julie's laughter seemed a bit too bright when Rocky made a joke. He chalked it up to his son's effort to bond with his stepmother, something he had hoped for. Yet, the oddities started piling up. There were moments when Raphael would walk into a room and feel the energy shift, as though a conversation had abruptly stopped. Julie and Rocky would act overly casual, their voices forced and their movements too deliberate. Once, Raphael came home earlier than expected and found Julie and Rocky sitting close together on the couch, their faces flushed. Julie claimed they had been watching a scary movie, but the tension in the room was palpable. Still, Raphael dismissed these incidents. He trusted Julie, and Rocky was his son, his blood. The idea of betrayal, especially one so deep, was unthinkable to him. Then came the day that would forever shatter Raphael's illusions. It was a Friday, and Raphael had planned to work late, finalizing a major project. But a sudden rainstorm forced the site to close early, allowing him to head home by mid-afternoon. He didn't call to inform Julie, wanting to surprise her with flowers and a bottle of wine as he pulled into the driveway. Raphael noticed Rocky's car parked outside. This struck him as odd, since Rocky should have been at college. Dismissing the thought, he entered the house quietly, hoping to catch Julie off guard with his surprise. The house was unusually silent. Raphael walked into the living room and set the flowers on the table. As he made his way toward the stairs, he heard faint laughter coming from the direction of Rocky's room. His brow furrowed. Raphael climbed the stairs cautiously, his work boots muffling the sound of his steps on the carpeted floor. The closer he got to Rocky's room, the clearer the voices became. His heart began to race, though he wasn't sure why. When he reached the door, it was slightly ajar. He peeked inside and froze. There, on Rocky's bed, were Julie and Rocky, both completely naked, tangled in each other's arms. They were laughing, their intimacy evident. Raphael's vision blurred with rage and disbelief. For a moment, he couldn't move, his mind struggling to process the scene before him. But then a cold, calculated clarity settled over him. He stepped back from the door quietly, his face blank but his thoughts chaotic. He didn't burst in. He didn't scream or confront them. Instead, he turned and walked back down the stairs, his hands trembling as he gripped the banister outside. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy with humidity. Raphael sat in his truck, his breath shallow and uneven. The betrayal cut deeper than he ever thought possible. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a desecration of his family, a wound that could never be healed by the time Raphael returned to the house. Julie and Rocky were acting as though nothing had happened. Rocky greeted him casually, asking why he was home early. Julie came down the stairs, her smile warm but nervous. Raphael didn't confront them. He needed time to think, to plan. Later that evening, Julie mentioned she was planning to visit her mother the next day and would be gone for the weekend. Raphael nodded, his expression unreadable. Inside, however, his anger simmered, threatening to boil over. That night, Raphael lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He replayed the scene in his mind over and over, each time fueling the fire of his rage. He thought about the sacrifices he had made for Rocky, the love and trust he had given Julie, and this was how they repaid him. By dawn, Raphael had made his decision. He would confront Rocky, not as a father seeking explanations, but as a man demanding retribution. When Julie left for her mother's house the next morning, Raphael saw her off with a kiss on the cheek. She had no idea of the storm brewing inside him. Once she was gone, Raphael turned his attention to Rocky, who was still asleep in his room. Raphael entered the room quietly, standing over his son's bed. Rocky stirred and opened his eyes, confused by his father's presence. "Dad, what's going on?" Rocky asked, sitting up. Raphael didn't answer immediately. He took a seat at the edge of the bed, his expression calm but his eyes filled with a cold intensity. "Rocky," Raphael began, his voice steady but firm. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Rocky's confusion turned to alarm as he realized what his father was talking about. He tried to explain, to apologize, but Raphael cut him off. "You've betrayed me," Raphael said, his voice rising. "You betrayed this family. And for what? Lust? A moment's pleasure." Rocky's apologies only fueled Raphael's anger. He reached for a metal rod he had brought from the garage, hidden behind his back. Rocky barely had time to react before Raphael swung it, striking him across the head. Rocky collapsed onto the bed, blood dripping from the wound. He was still alive, moaning in pain. But Raphael wasn't done. The betrayal demanded more than a single blow. It demanded justice. Dragging Rocky's unconscious body to the backyard, Raphael began digging a grave. The physical labor provided a twisted sense of relief, each shovelful of dirt a release for his pent-up rage. When the grave was ready, Raphael turned to place Rocky inside. To his shock, his son's eyes fluttered open. Rocky was barely alive, his breath shallow and labored. For a moment, Raphael hesitated. But the rage returned, overpowering any trace of humanity left within him. Without a word, Raphael began filling the grave, burying his son alive. Rocky's weak cries were muffled by the dirt, fading until there was nothing but silence. By the time Raphael was done, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. He stood over the freshly filled grave, his chest heaving. The deed was done, but the weight of his actions was only beginning to settle. The house was eerily quiet when Raphael went back inside. He washed the dirt from his hands and clothes, his movements mechanical. He didn't think about what he would say to Julie when she returned. He didn't think about the future. All he could do was sit in the living room, staring into the void, waiting for the consequences of his actions to catch up to him. The house was unnervingly quiet when Julie returned the next morning. She had left for her mother's place as planned and had expected to come back to a normal, uneventful day. But from the moment she stepped through the door, something felt off. The first thing she noticed was the air, a heavy, stifling stillness that seemed to press against her chest. Raphael was sitting in the living room, motionless, staring blankly at the floor. There was no sign of Rocky anywhere, and Julie's instinct immediately kicked in. "Raphael," she called out, setting her purse down on the counter. "Where's Rocky?" He didn't respond at first. His hands rested on his knees, his knuckles white as though he were gripping an invisible weight. Julie walked closer, her heart racing. "Raphael," she repeated, her voice tinged with nervousness. Finally, he looked up. His eyes bloodshot and hollow. The sight sent a chill down Julie's spine. She had never seen him like this before. "He's gone," Raphael said flatly. "What do you mean gone?" Julie asked, her voice trembling. Raphael didn't answer immediately. He stood up slowly, towering over her. There was something menacing in his demeanor, something that made Julie take a step back instinctively. "Where is he?" she demanded. Her fear growing, Raphael's lips curled into a bitter smile. "You know exactly where he is, Julie." The words hung in the air like a dagger poised to strike. Julie's mind raced, piecing together the implications of his statement. Her knees went weak as the horrifying realization dawned on her. "Raphael, what did you do?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Raphael took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. "I did what any father would do when his son betrays him, when his wife betrays him." Julie's breath hitched. "No, no, no," she stammered, shaking her head. "This can't be real. You're lying." But Raphael's cold, unwavering stare told her otherwise. Desperation consumed Julie as she backed away, her eyes darting around the room for an escape. She had to get out of there. She had to call for help. "Where is he?" she screamed, her voice breaking. "He's where he deserves to be," Raphael replied, his tone devoid of emotion. Julie turned and bolted for the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. She needed to get to her phone to lock herself away and call the police. But before she could reach the top of the stairs, Raphael grabbed her wrist, yanking her back. "You're not going anywhere," he growled, his grip like iron. Julie struggled against him, tears streaming down her face. "Let me go," she screamed. In the chaos, Julie managed to grab a glass vase from a nearby table and smash it against Raphael's head. He staggered backward, dazed, giving her the opportunity to break free. She sprinted up the stairs, slamming the bedroom door behind her and locking it. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "Please help me," she sobbed into the phone. "My husband, he's done something horrible. He killed my stepson. He's going to kill me, too." The dispatcher tried to calm her down, assuring her that officers were on their way. Julie barricaded herself in the room, listening intently for Raphael's movements. Downstairs, Raphael had regained his composure. Blood trickled from the wound on his head, but he barely noticed. He began ascending the stairs methodically, his heavy footsteps echoing through the house. "Julie," he called out, his voice calm and unervingly composed. "Come out and we'll talk. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Julie's breathing quickened. She clutched a lamp in her hands, ready to use it as a weapon if necessary. Raphael reached the top of the stairs and began trying the doors. He knew she was in the bedroom. His patience was wearing thin. "You can't hide forever," he said, his tone cold. Suddenly, he slammed his shoulder against the door, trying to break it down. Julie screamed, pressing her weight against the barricade she had created. The door shook with each impact, and she knew it wouldn't hold for long. Just as Raphael was about to break through, the sound of sirens filled the air. The police had arrived. Raphael froze, his rage momentarily replaced by panic. Julie took the opportunity to scream out the window, alerting the officers to her location. Within moments, the house was surrounded. Officers burst through the door, guns drawn, shouting commands. Raphael didn't resist. He dropped to his knees, his hands raised, as though all the fight had left him. Julie rushed downstairs, collapsing into the arms of one of the officers. "He killed Rocky," she sobbed. "He buried him in the backyard. Please, you have to find him." Raphael was taken into custody, his expression eerily calm. During the interrogation, he confessed everything. He recounted how he had discovered Julie and Rocky's affair, how he had confronted Rocky and killed him in a fit of rage, and how he had buried him alive in the backyard. The officers immediately began searching the property. In the backyard, they found the freshly dug grave. When they exhumed Rocky's body, the truth of Raphael's horrific actions became undeniable. The trial that followed was a spectacle, drawing attention from the media and the public. Julie testified against Raphael, admitting to her affair with Rocky and detailing the events leading up to the murder. Raphael showed no remorse, his only justification being that his actions were a response to the ultimate betrayal. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before delivering their verdict, guilty on all counts. Raphael was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the aftermath, Julie was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She moved out of the house, unable to bear the memories that haunted its walls. The community shunned her, blaming her for the chain of events that had led to such a tragic outcome. As for Raphael, he spent the rest of his days behind bars, replaying the moments that had destroyed his family. The rage that had once consumed him was replaced by a hollow emptiness, a void that no amount of justification could fill. The story of Raphael, Julie, and Rocky became a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of how betrayal, rage, and lust can lead to unimaginable consequences. The scars left behind would never fully heal, serving as a testament to the devastating power of human emotions left unchecked. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like this video for more true crime video. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and theories in the comments section below. Take care and see you in the next video.